It was supposed to be a quiet Saturday morning, the kind where you smell waffles crisping in the toaster and your daughter's laughter echoes faintly from her bedroom. But instead, all I heard was the sound of a scream, sharp, high-pitched, and hollow, followed by a noise that didn't belong in the suburbs. A gunshot. I froze for half a second. Then everything inside me moved at once. My coffee mug crashed to the floor as I bolted toward the front door, heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. My mind couldn't make sense of it, couldn't believe what my ears had just heard. But the moment I flung that door open, the world stopped spinning. She was on the porch. My daughter, Emily. She was lying on the wooden steps, her legs curled, her small hands clutched around her stomach. Blood. So much blood. It spread across the porch like spilled paint, pooling under her white t-shirt. Her lips were trembling, her eyes wide with a terror I've never seen before. Not even in movies, not even in nightmares. And standing over her, holding the smoking gun like it was a remote control, was Karen. Not Karen, as in some online meme. Her real name was Susan Walters, our neighbor, the head of the HOA, the self-proclaimed guardian of the community aesthetic. And right now, her hands were shaking. Her mouth was moving, muttering something over and over, something insane. She changed the password. She locked me out. This is treason. This is treason. I screamed. I didn't even know what I said. I think I screamed her name, or maybe I cursed, or maybe I just made a sound that no man should ever have to make when seeing his daughter in that state. I dropped to my knees beside Emily, pressing my hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding, even though I had no idea what I was doing. Her skin was cold. Her eyes blinked slowly. She looked up at me and whispered, "Dad," and I lost it. "Call an ambulance." I roared, "Someone call an ambulance." I could hear sirens in the distance. Someone, maybe Laura, my wife, maybe a neighbor, had already called, but they felt miles away. Karen or Susan took a step back, still holding the weapon. Her face was blank, numb. And then the neighbors came running. One of them tackled her to the ground. She didn't fight. She didn't cry. She just kept repeating the same words like a broken radio. She changed the password. It was my internet. My internet. Police cars screeched into the cul-de-sac. Uniformed officers flooded the scene, weapons drawn, ordering everyone back. Two of them pried the gun from Karen's hands while another cuffed her behind her back. Her eyes were wide now, panicked, like she was just waking up from a dream and realizing what she'd done. They dragged her into the back of a cruiser. She didn't resist. Not really. Just kept looking at Emily like she wasn't a human being, like she was just an obstacle in her perfect little HOA world. I was still on the ground, pressing into my daughter's wound, whispering prayers I didn't even remember knowing. The paramedics arrived next. They lifted her onto a stretcher. I wasn't allowed in the ambulance. I didn't want to let her go, but I had to. As the ambulance doors closed and the lights sped away into the distance, I stood in the street, hands red, shirt soaked, shaking from head to toe. My neighbors watched in silence, their HOA meetings, lawn complaints, and mailbox arguments suddenly meaningless. The woman they'd once elected as president had just shot a 12-year-old girl over a goddamn Wi-Fi password. And yet, somehow, none of this started with guns, or even with rage. It started with something so small, so absurd, I still can't fully believe it happened. It started with a password, a simple decision my daughter made to protect our home network, and it ended in blood. But if you really want to understand how things got this bad, why a suburban family was pulled into chaos, and how a woman who cared more about lawn signs than human life came to do the unthinkable, then we have to go back. Back to when everything still looked normal. Back to before the Wi-Fi, before the paranoia, before the mask of neighbors slipped. Because this story didn't begin with a bullet. It began with a knock on the door and a smile that hid something far more dangerous. 3 months before the shooting, life was peaceful, ordinary. We had just moved into the neighborhood. Fresh start, they said. Safe community. Good schools. Quiet streets. The kind of place where kids ride bikes without checking over their shoulders. where you wave at your neighbor just because, where American flags fly on every other porch, and behind every one of those doors is a smiling family, a barking dog, and a barbecue waiting for summer. We needed that peace. After the layoffs, after the stress of the last 2 years, I was grateful to finally land a remote job. I was handling IT operations from home, long hours, yes, but I got to be close to my family. My wife, Laura, was juggling part-time work at the clinic and homeschooling our daughter. Emily, she was 12, smart, quirky, loved robotics, coding, and baking blueberry muffins that somehow always exploded in the oven. Her bedroom was a collage of anime posters, fairy lights, and a massive whiteboard covered in math problems and gaming strategies. She was the kind of kid who didn't just play games, she studied them, researched them, and then found a way to beat them. We were proud of her. Maybe too proud, maybe naive. Our house was near the end of a cul-de-sac, a 2-story suburban cookie cutter, with a porch swing and those black shutters that always fade too fast. It was part of the Silver Oak Heights HOA community. Everything looked clean. Trimmed lawns, identical mailboxes, rules. So many rules. Within the first week, we received the welcome packet. It was less of a pamphlet and more of a manifesto. Lawn length must not exceed 2.5 inches. Trash cans must be brought in by 6 p.m. No political signage of any kind. Only white or brown curtains visible from outside. And then there was Karen. We met her the day after we moved in. She walked right up to our porch while I was assembling Emily's bike. "Hi," she said with a tight smile. "I'm Susan. I'm head of the HOA board here. Just making my rounds." She extended her hand, but her eyes weren't on me, they were scanning the porch, noticing the box still taped shut in the corner, the slightly tilted welcome mat. "Just a heads up," she added. "You'll want to repaint that railing before the next inspection. We've got very high standards in Silver Oak." Laura offered her lemonade. Susan declined. "I don't do sugar," she said, before turning back to the sidewalk and snapping a photo of someone's flower bed. We laughed it off. Every neighborhood has that one person, right? But Karen wasn't that one person. She was the HOA, and everything she touched, she controlled. At first, the run-ins were minor. She left a note in our mailbox about Emily's chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Could be misinterpreted by neighbors as graffiti. She sent an email about the Halloween pumpkin we'd carved. Decorations should remain neutral and inoffensive. Emily didn't mind. In fact, she found it funny. She started drawing even more elaborate chalk art, unicorns holding protest signs, and one that said, HOA equals haters of art. That one mysteriously disappeared the next morning. The real problem began when Emily started her coding project for school. She was building a smart home simulation, a little Wi-Fi controlled system that could manage lights, temperature, and locks. It was for the state fair. She needed strong, uninterrupted internet access and dedicated server access for some testing. So we upgraded our home Wi-Fi, got a mesh system, strong passwords, static IP settings, the works. That's when Karen started showing up again. Not on our porch, but near it, lurking, pausing in front of our house with her phone raised, like she was scanning for a signal. Then, one day, Emily burst into the living room, holding her tablet. "Dad, someone's trying to connect to our network again. It's the third time. Are you sure it's not just a random device nearby?" She flipped the tablet around. The MAC address was almost identical to the one that had pinged the network earlier, and it had a custom name, S. Walters HOA. We stared at each other. Laura said, "There's no way. I wasn't so sure." The router logs confirmed it. Someone was trying to brute force into our Wi-Fi every night around 2 a.m. We changed the password, locked it tighter, and added MAC filtering. Emily thought it was hilarious. Guess she doesn't like paying for her own internet. We should have taken it more seriously. A week later, we received an HOA citation. Unauthorized antenna modification, visible from exterior view. It was Emily's temporary Wi-Fi repeater, a 2-inch booster hidden behind her window curtain. That's when it clicked. Karen wasn't just angry. She felt entitled to our bandwidth, our privacy, our compliance. I wrote a polite email. Karen responded with a warning about community surveillance and cooperative expectations. The tone was condescending, passive-aggressive, controlling. Laura told me to ignore her. Emily, on the other hand, had a different idea. She installed a firewall and created a honeypot, a fake Wi-Fi network named free_toy_Wi-Fi, and monitored who connected. Guess who logged on? Susan Walters. Twice. Emily even made a PDF report. Mac logs. IP timestamps. She titled it, "How My Neighbor Tried to Steal My Wi-Fi, a Middle Schooler's Guide to Network Security." It was funny, innocent, creative, and stupid, because a few days later the camera on our porch, the one that had been recording 24/7, was spray-painted black. We filed a report, but without proof, there was nothing to do. Karen began walking her dog right up to our doorstep, letting it pee on our mat. Emily caught her once and said, "Hey, could you not?" Karen's response? "Your daughter is rude and aggressive. I'll be reporting this." The tension grew like a shadow, unspoken but present, heavy. At the next HOA meeting, Karen publicly questioned whether we understood the values of Silver Oak. That night, we found a dead rat in our mailbox. I wanted to leave. Laura didn't want to give Karen that power. And Emily? She smiled and said, "Let her play her little games. I've got stronger passwords now." She didn't realize that the password wasn't the thing Karen wanted to break. It was us. But we were still a family. Still laughing, baking muffins, and watching Netflix together on the couch. We still believed we were safe. That belief would shatter in a matter of weeks. The first time Karen shouted at Emily in public, we thought it was a misunderstanding. It happened on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Emily had just gotten home from coding club and stopped to check the mail. Karen was already outside, standing by her garden with gardening shears in one hand and her phone in the other. "You think you're clever, don't you?" she hissed loud enough for the entire block to hear. Emily turned, confused. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Karen snapped. "You locked me out. You changed the entire network. You violated community harmony." Emily glanced around, bewildered. "This is our Wi-Fi." Karen pointed her phone toward the house. "Everything was working fine until you moved in. My system is down. My smart sprinklers don't respond. My Ring cameras lag, and you're going to pay for that." By the time I got outside, she was halfway through recording Emily on her phone, muttering about cyberstalking minors and unauthorized surveillance. I stepped between them. "Back off, Susan." She looked at me like I'd just cursed in church. "Oh, so now you're defending her? A child who spies on me?" "She's 12, I said flatly, "and she's not spying. She's protecting our network from you." Karen flinched just for a second and then stormed off toward her porch, barking, "I'm filing a formal complaint." And she did. That night, we received a notice from the HOA board. Violation of HOA decency standards, aggressive behavior toward another homeowner. It was signed by Susan Walters, HOA chair. I appealed. No response. Laura wanted to let it go. Just block Karen from our thoughts and move on. But I couldn't. Something had shifted. Karen wasn't just annoying anymore. She was obsessed. She began pacing our street daily. Not walking, pacing. Sometimes with a leash, sometimes without a dog. Her phone was always in hand. We saw her peeking into windows, hovering near Emily's room. When I stepped outside to confront her, she just smiled and said, "Just making sure the rules are being followed." Emily kept trying to laugh it off, but I could see the tension in her eyes. She stopped opening the curtains in her room. She unplugged her smart lights. She even disabled voice commands on our home system. One night, I found her curled up on the couch, hoodie over her head, screen dimmed. "She's not just mad, Dad," she whispered. "She's watching us." She was right. 2 nights later, Laura discovered a strange device in the bushes between our house and Karen's, a cheap USB-powered Wi-Fi scanner taped to a waterproof casing. It was trying to spoof our network. We called the police. Again, an officer came, took the device, wrote a report, and left. No arrest. No warning. No proof it's hers, he said. No direct footage. Just circumstantial. The next morning, our trash bins were knocked over contents scattered down the street. That same day, we received another violation notice: excessive noise from household electronic devices after quiet hours. We hadn't played music, no parties, no guests, just the hum of a normal home. Emily's project was nearly complete. She'd even been invited to present it at the regional fair. But her focus began slipping. She stopped coding after dark, started sleeping in our room. Her hands trembled when she typed. I wanted to move. Laura insisted we hold the line. We're not running because of a woman who can't handle a password change. I tried to believe her. I tried to stay strong, but Karen wasn't done. One morning, we woke up to find HOA flyers taped to every mailbox on the street, in bold red font. Cybersecurity threats from new family residents are advised to avoid connecting to unknown networks. Suspicious activity has been reported linked to house number 14. That was us. She didn't name us, but everyone knew. Suddenly, the neighbors weren't waving anymore. One stopped their kid from riding past our driveway. Another returned a casserole dish without a word. I felt it, the social freeze. Karen's power. Emily cried that night, quietly alone. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? The next morning, she made a decision. I'm locking the system. Dad, full lockdown mode. Nobody touches our network again. Not even for guest access. Okay, I said, do whatever makes you feel safe. She smiled weakly and went back to work. That night, our doorbell rang. I opened it to find Karen standing there in a blazer and pearls, clipboard in hand like she was delivering a sermon. We've decided to install a community-managed mesh network, she said, as if we discussed it. It'll reduce interference and centralize management. You'll be giving up your private Wi-Fi credentials, of course. I stared at her, stunned. That's not happening. Her expression didn't even twitch. It's mandatory. I've already received consent from 7 other households. I stepped outside. Susan, you're not taking control of my internet. She didn't blink. Refusal will result in formal HOA review. Then review this, I said. Get off my porch. She smiled. I'll be back tomorrow. Maybe you'll be more cooperative by then. Emily watched from the window. Her fingers were clenched into fists. She didn't say a word. That night, she deleted every public access point from our system. She renamed the main Wi-Fi. Stay-away_Karen, and for a while, that gave us back a little peace. But not for long. It was a Thursday morning when things spiraled into madness. Emily was walking home from her friend's house when Karen blocked her path. You think this is funny? She said, waving her phone in Emily's face. You think humiliating me is funny? Emily tried to step around her. Karen shoved her. Hard. Emily fell into a bush. Her backpack split open. A neighbor saw the whole thing and called the police. Karen was questioned, denied everything, claimed Emily attacked her. No charges were filed. Emily stopped smiling after that. I wanted to sue. Laura begged for calm. Emily just stared out the window, silent. Then we found the voicemail. Karen had left it at 3:17 a.m. Her voice slurred, angry. You think you can control my internet? I built this neighborhood. I keep it safe. That little brat of yours is a virus, and viruses get deleted. That was the moment I realized we weren't dealing with control issues anymore. We were dealing with delusion, with obsession. And Emily? She was no longer just a child with a password. She had become Karen's personal enemy. After the voicemail, I stopped sleeping properly. I started checking the doors twice, then 3 times before bed, made sure every window was latched. I kept a baseball bat beside my nightstand, something I hadn't done since we lived near downtown LA years ago. But this wasn't LA. This was supposed to be safe, quiet, normal. And yet, in the dead hours of the night, I often found myself staring out the blinds, watching the street. Sometimes I'd see her, just a shape in the darkness across the road, standing still. No dog, no flashlight, just watching. I never told Emily, never told Laura. But I started writing everything down. Every time Karen crossed our property line, every time she loitered near Emily's window, I logged it with dates, times, photos. I didn't know what I'd do with it, but part of me hoped I'd never need it. That hope didn't last long. 2 days later, we woke to find red paint smeared across our garage door. 4 giant letters: liar, the security camera footage, deleted. The DVR had been unplugged. Emily didn't say a word. She just stood there, arms crossed, her face blank. Then she went into her room and tore down every curtain, every string light, every piece of decor. She stripped the space bare as if to say, if she wants to see inside, let her see nothing. That night, she asked to sleep on the couch. I don't want to be near the window. I didn't argue. I called the police again. Officer Ramirez, one of the only ones who'd actually shown some empathy before, came and walked through the house with me. Has she threatened you directly? He asked. Only implied. He nodded, clearly frustrated. It's the implication that keeps us from doing anything. Without footage, witnesses, or something physical, I interrupted. What about the voicemail? He hesitated. It's suggestive, but unless she physically does something, it won't stick in court. I stared at him. So, we just wait until she does something? He didn't answer. 3 days later, something snapped. Emily went missing. It was only for an hour, but it was the longest hour of my life. She left for the corner store to buy batteries for her robotics kit. She usually walked. It was safe, broad daylight. But when she didn't return after 40 minutes, Laura started to panic. I called her, straight to voicemail. We checked every corner of the block, knocked on every door. Nothing. And then we heard shouting, a voice we recognized too well, coming from Karen's backyard. Laura ran to the fence. I jumped it, and there she was, Emily, standing stiffly near Karen's back patio, while Karen stood between her and the exit, waving a hose and ranting. She trespassed. She came into my yard. She's been spying again. Emily looked pale, frozen. She dropped her bag, Karen hissed. I was checking for contraband. Probably another one of her surveillance bugs. I stepped forward. Emily, come here. Now. Karen blocked her path again. She's a threat. She's manipulating my security. I have rights. I don't know how I kept my hands off her, but somehow I did. When the police arrived, Karen was still ranting. Emily didn't say a word until we got home. Then, quietly, she said, I was just walking. She dragged me into her yard. I didn't drop anything. Laura hugged her so tight I thought they might fuse. That night, I bought a second security system. Hidden cameras, indoor motion sensors, panic button app for Emily's phone. We weren't paranoid anymore. We were preparing for war. Then came the letter. Typed, no return address, no signature, just one line, control your daughter, or someone else will. I turned it over to the police. They ran for prints. Nothing. Officer Ramirez was furious. We'll increase patrols near your house, he said. Emily barely reacted. She'd stop reacting to anything. She just kept her head down and her eyes open. At night, I'd see her staring at the ceiling, earbuds in but no sound playing. She was listening. Always listening. And then came the fake emergency. It was 2 a.m. Sirens outside. We rushed to the door and saw a fire truck idling near our home. One of our neighbors, an elderly woman named Mrs. Green, was standing barefoot on the lawn, confused. What happened? I asked. They said your daughter triggered a carbon monoxide alert, that she was using illegal devices. I don't know, I just let them in. I looked down the street. Karen was standing near her mailbox, smiling. The firemen found nothing, of course. No leaks, no tampering. But Emily was mortified, humiliated in front of the whole block. That morning, she turned off every device in the house and stayed in bed with the covers over her head. I decided to act. I took the files, the logs, the voicemail, the photos, everything, and brought it to the HOA board. I presented it in front of the president, Mr. Hill, and 3 other members. They listened. They nodded. They said all the right things. But the next day, I received a final warning notice. Escalating hostilities and unfounded accusations against an HOA board member may result in fines or removal from the community. Signed, once again, by Susan Walters. I snapped. I told Laura we were putting the house on the market. She cried. Emily didn't. She just asked, "How long will it take to move?" But we never got the chance. Because 2 nights later, the cameras caught her, Karen, standing on our porch, holding something. She didn't try to hide this time. She stood there for exactly 6 minutes, just breathing, looking through the door like she could see inside, like she was waiting for something to move. Then she leaned forward and placed a bullet casing on the welcome mat. We called 911. This time, they responded quickly. They questioned her. She claimed it was a symbolic gesture, something the Second Amendment allows. They couldn't arrest her. No actual firearm was visible. No threat made in that moment. Emily didn't sleep that night. None of us did. And yet the next day, she still went out to check the mail, still tried to pretend life was normal. She was brave. So brave. And that's what broke me. Because I knew, deep down, it was only a matter of time. That time came exactly 3 days later. The day everything shattered began like any other. The sun rose soft and pink over Silver Oak Heights. Lawns shimmered with dew. Children rode bikes. Sprinklers hissed quietly, and birds chirped like the neighborhood hadn't been teetering on the edge of something unthinkable. Emily woke up early. She had an online science fair meeting that morning and wanted to rehearse her project one more time. "Dad," she said, brushing her hair into a quick ponytail, "after this, can we finally go to the lake? You promised." I smiled. "Of course. Phone's off, just nature. Promise." She grinned and ran off to prepare her slides. Laura was already out on the patio, sipping tea and scrolling through recipes on her tablet. I went upstairs for a few minutes to check in on some work, emails, just a couple things before the weekend. That's when the doorbell rang. I didn't hear it at first, but Emily did. She answered it. What happened in those next 60 seconds will replay in my mind for the rest of my life. From upstairs, I heard a muffled voice. Then Emily's footsteps. Then a loud crash. I stood up. Then came the shout. Then the scream. Then the gunshot. Everything went quiet after that. For a moment, I didn't move. My body knew something was wrong, but my brain was still catching up. Then all at once, I ran. I bolted down the stairs, skipping steps, heart hammering, lungs collapsing. The front door was open. The morning sun spilled in. And on the porch was my daughter. Collapsed, blood, soaking her shirt. Her left hand was clutching her stomach. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Her legs twitched barely. And standing over her was Karen. She wasn't yelling, wasn't panicking. She was calm, too calm. The gun in her hand, small, black, trembling only slightly, still smoked at the barrel. Her eyes locked onto me like I was the one out of place. "She's infected," Karen whispered. "She corrupted everything." I warned her. I didn't think. I moved. I fell to my knees beside Emily, pressing both hands into her wound. Blood pulsed out hot and fast. Her eyes fluttered. "Stay with me, baby. Look at me. I'm here. I'm here." Karen didn't run. She didn't even try. She stood there, like she was waiting for someone to thank her. Laura screamed from behind me, a sound I can't even describe, and then someone from across the street shouted, "Call the police." The next few minutes were a blur. More neighbors gathered. Someone restrained Karen. She didn't fight. She just kept saying it was justified. She locked me out. She was dangerous. I was defending the network. Defending the network. That's what she said after shooting a 12-year-old girl in the stomach. The paramedics arrived within 5 minutes. Officer Ramirez was one of the first responders. His face changed the moment he saw Emily. I saw his hands clench at his sides. He moved quickly, took Karen's weapon, handcuffed her without hesitation. Karen looked confused, like she couldn't understand why people were angry, as if she'd just fulfilled a civic duty. They loaded Emily into the ambulance. I wasn't allowed inside, but I climbed in anyway. I'm not leaving her. The EMT didn't argue. I held her hand the entire way. I whispered stories, old memories, anything to keep her consciousness flickering. Her grip was weak, but it was there. The hospital was a battlefield of white coats and cold lights. Doctors rushed her into surgery. The words internal bleeding, vascular damage, risk of shock were thrown at me like knives. Laura collapsed in the waiting room. I stayed standing, not because I was strong, but because I was too numb to fall. Hours passed. I don't remember how many. Eventually, a surgeon stepped out, gloves still stained with blood. "She's alive," he said, but it was close. She lost a lot of blood. We're watching her vitals closely. That's when I finally sat down and cried. The news broke within hours. HOA president shoots 12-year-old over Wi-Fi dispute. Suburban nightmare when power turns violent. Digital obsession ends in bloodshed. Media vans swarmed the neighborhood. Our street became a circus. Reporters knocked on every door. Helicopters circled overhead. Karen was arrested and denied bail. Neighbors tried to pretend they hadn't seen it coming, that she was just strict or a little too into the rules. But we knew better. We had seen her unravel day by day, and still nobody stopped her. I returned to the house briefly to pick up a change of clothes and Emily's favorite plush toy. As I approached the porch, the blood had already been washed off by the city. I saw it. The bullet casing. Still there. I picked it up with shaking fingers, stared at it. That tiny piece of metal had torn our entire world apart. And all because a woman couldn't handle losing access to a Wi-Fi signal. Back at the hospital, Emily was awake. Barely. She looked small, pale, but her eyes were open. When she saw me, she tried to smile. "Hey, Dad." I sat beside her, took her hand. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She squeezed back. "Not your fault," she said. Then she looked past me, toward the window. "Did she get arrested?" I nodded. "Yeah, she's not coming back." Emily closed her eyes. "Good." The first thing the officer said to me the next morning was, "She's showing no remorse." Karen had been booked overnight. Mugshot taken. Fingerprinted. She didn't resist. Didn't even ask for a lawyer at first. According to Officer Ramirez, she gave a brief statement that chilled every officer in the room. I warned them. They failed to comply. The girl was breaching HOA cyber infrastructure and posed a threat to neighborhood security. She said it like she was reading from a handbook, like she still believed she had done the right thing. Emily was stable, but not out of the woods. She'd undergone a second procedure to stop residual bleeding. The doctors kept her in the ICU under close observation. Laura barely left her bedside. I spent my time pacing hospital hallways, answering calls I didn't want to answer. Local news stations called us nonstop. Then came the national outlets. CNN, Fox, NBC. Some reporter from a podcast even asked if we'd give him exclusive trauma rights. I hung up. Outside our house, camera crews lined the sidewalks. HOA members posted a sign saying, "Respect the family's privacy." Hypocrites. Some of those same neighbors had voted for Karen year after year, had whispered behind our backs, had ignored every time we warned them that something was wrong. But now that the blood was visible, now that the whole country was watching, they wanted to pretend they'd always been on our side. Karen's arrest made headlines for 3 days straight. She was officially charged with attempted murder, child endangerment, unlawful weapon discharge, and harassment. Bail was denied. At her arraignment, she wore a beige jumpsuit and a blank expression. When asked how she pleaded, she looked straight at the judge and said, "Not guilty. I was protecting my neighborhood." The courtroom gasped. Laura gripped my hand so tightly I lost feeling in my fingers. Outside, a swarm of protesters had gathered. Some held signs in support of our family. Others, surprisingly, supported Karen. HOA, power matters. She protected her rights. Digital invasion equals real threat. It was insane. Like we were living in two different realities. We decided to leave the neighborhood. Not because we were running, but because the sight of that porch, the one where our daughter bled out, was too much. Laura packed quietly. Emily didn't ask questions. She just nodded. She understood. But before we left, we did something important. We filed a lawsuit against the HOA. Negligence, failure to act on multiple formal complaints, retaliatory citations, harassment. It wasn't about money. It was about accountability. Our lawyer, Ms. Martinez, had already built a strong case. Emails, video logs, the voicemail, even signed statements from a few neighbors who'd finally grown a conscience. Karen's reign was over. But the damage she caused ran deeper than any legal battle. Emily was discharged 2 weeks later. She could walk, but not for long. She needed help sitting up. Her breathing was shallow, strained. But her mind? Sharper than ever. "Dad," she said one night, "can I go back to coding soon?" I smiled through tears. "You can do anything you want." She nodded. "Good. I want to build something. Something better than a firewall." "What kind of something?" "A system to flag psychos before they shoot you over a password." We both laughed. It hurt, but it healed. Karen's trial started 4 months later. By then, our story had been told and retold. On TV, online, even in a documentary. People argued about it in comment sections. Some blamed mental illness. Others blamed gun access. A few blamed us, called us privileged techies who pushed too far. But the facts were clear. The jury took less than a day. Karen was found guilty on all counts. At sentencing, she was given 25 years. She showed no emotion. When asked if she had anything to say, she turned to the judge and said, "You let the virus win. But someday you'll see. I was just ahead of my time." That was the last I ever saw her. The HOA tried to rebrand. They appointed a new board, issued apologies, changed the community charter. But the stain never washed out. Property values dropped. Residents left. Silver Oak Heights became a cautionary tale. Not about Wi-Fi, not even about HOA politics, but about what happens when control becomes obsession. When community leaders think they're gods. When paranoia is dressed up as order and no one asks questions until someone bleeds. Emily's recovery was slow. Scars on her body, deeper ones in her mind. She didn't like loud noises. She avoided front porches. But she also refused to be afraid forever. She went back to school, gave a TEDx talk on surviving obsession in the age of tech. She wrote a short book, part memoir, part cybersecurity manual. It was titled, "Change Your Password, Not Your Morals." It went viral. We bought a small house on a quiet street. No HOA, no rules about curtain colors or lawn height. Just space. Freedom. One evening, months after the trial, I found Emily sitting on the back porch, laptop in hand, a soft breeze brushing through her hair. She was coding again. "What are you building?" I asked. "A smart sensor," she said. "Not for security, for peace of mind." I sat beside her, watched her fingers dance across the keys. She paused. "Dad?" "Yeah." "Do you ever think none of this would have happened if I hadn't changed the password?" I swallowed hard. Maybe. But then, again, maybe she was always going to break. She nodded, then closed the laptop. "Good," she said, "because I'm changing all the passwords again." The physical wound healed faster than the emotional one. Emily was home, alive, walking, eating. But she wasn't the same girl who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen, laughing while sneaking cookie dough off the tray. That spark, the spontaneous joy, had dimmed. She still smiled, still said, "I'm fine." But something was missing behind her eyes. She started avoiding mirrors, stopped wearing colors she used to love. Her bedroom door, once always half open, now stayed closed, locked most nights. Laura and I decided to seek professional help. We found a trauma therapist, Dr. Langston, who specialized in adolescent PTSD. Emily met with her twice a week. At first, she was reluctant, said nothing, just stared at the floor, arms folded, eyes darting to the exit. But over time, she opened up, slowly, in fragments. "I didn't think she'd really shoot," she whispered once. Dr. Langston leaned in. "Why not?" "Because adults don't do that over passwords." That line broke me, because she was right. Adults aren't supposed to do that. We started attending family sessions. Dr. Langston made us draw timelines, life before and life after. Emily drew hers in red ink. Before, sun, trees, a house with a smiley face. After, a porch, a gun, a silent scream. We talked about fear, not just the night of the shooting, but the weeks before. The notes, the stares, the silence. Laura cried during the third session. I should have pulled us out sooner. Emily took her hand. It wasn't your fault. That moment was the first time I saw something glimmer in her again. Not joy, but strength. Meanwhile, the world moved on. The headlines faded. The neighborhood forgot. But we didn't. Emily had nightmares. Not always about the shooting. Sometimes they were quieter, dreams of being watched, chased, silenced. She'd wake up screaming. Once, I found her on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m., hugging her knees. She was in my room, she whispered. I know it was just a dream, but it felt real. I held her for an hour. No advice, no promises, just presence. And gradually, over weeks and months, those dreams came less often. Not gone, but manageable. Laura coped in her own way. She started baking again, not just for us, but for the hospital staff, Emily's teachers, the neighbors who'd stood by us. It was her therapy. Each tray of cookies was an act of defiance. A message, we're still standing. We still have sweetness left in us. As for me, I kept writing. I didn't post online, didn't publish anything. I just filled notebooks with memories, moments, fears. I wrote the day Emily was born. The first time she rode a bike. The first time she beat me in chess. The day she changed the Wi-Fi password. I needed to remember before, so I could believe in after. We got a dog. Emily named her Pixel, a floppy-eared golden retriever with no sense of personal space and a bark louder than the doorbell. Pixel never left Emily's side, slept at her feet, followed her to the mailbox, barked anytime a car idled too long near the curb. She was comfort and protection. Then came the school assembly. Emily had been invited to speak about online safety and resilience. She was nervous, practiced in front of the mirror 100 times. Her voice cracked when she started, but then she found her rhythm. She told her story, not in gory detail, but with heart, about being silenced, about taking her power back, and about how fear doesn't get to win unless you let it. When she finished, the auditorium went silent, then rose to its feet, standing ovation. She didn't cry, but I did. So did Laura. After that, things began to shift. Emily joined a nonprofit that teaches coding to girls. She mentored a 10-year-old whose parents were struggling with harassment in their own apartment complex. She created a cybersecurity toolkit for families. She titled it, Defend Yourself with Dignity, Digital Safety for Kids Who Shouldn't Have to Worry. It was downloaded over 60,000 times in 3 months. She even did a live Q&A on YouTube, and when someone in the chat asked, was it worth it? She paused, then said, if me getting hurt kept another kid from being hurt, then yeah, it was. That was the first time, she said, got hurt out loud. We still talk about it sometimes, late at night in the quiet glow of the kitchen. She wasn't just mad, was she? Emily asked once. No, I replied. She was sick and dangerous, but the system protected her until it didn't. People listened too late, she said. Yeah. She sipped her cocoa. Next time someone like her shows up, I hope people speak up sooner. So do I said, but I'm glad you never gave up on me. She looked up. I'm glad you didn't give up on yourself, she whispered. It's been over a year now. Emily is 13. Taller. Wiser. Still healing, but healing nonetheless. The scar on her stomach has faded slightly, but the one on her spirit? That's harder to measure. And yet, in so many ways, she's stronger now than I've ever seen her. She still keeps her password secure. Still names her Wi-Fi networks funny things like Karen-proof zone and 404, HOA underscore not underscore found. But she laughs again. She sings along with songs in the kitchen. She FaceTimes her cousins. She walks Pixel around the block unafraid. And the porch? She sits there sometimes, with me, just watching the sky turn orange over the rooftops. Do you ever wish it didn't happen? She asked me recently. I didn't lie. Every single day, I said, but I'm also proud of who you are and who you became because of it. She nodded, staring out at the street. Sometimes I still think about her. Not with anger, just confusion. Like, how does a person get that lost? I don't know. I told her. But that's not your burden to carry. She took a deep breath. I don't think it is anymore. The HOA was disbanded 6 months after Karen's sentencing. The city intervened. Silver Oak Heights now operates under a community volunteer council, no fines, no power plays, no politics. Just neighbors talking like human beings. It's quiet again, but not the kind of quiet that hides secrets, the kind of quiet that listens. Karen is still in prison. I've never visited her, never written, never responded to the few media requests that wanted us to reconcile, because some things don't need reconciliation. Some things just need distance and truth. Emily received a National Bravery Award last spring. She gave a short speech, just a few words. No drama, no victimhood, just truth. I didn't survive because I'm brave. I survived because my parents believed me, because one officer listened, because I didn't stop protecting what was mine, even when it was just a password. And if someone out there hears this and you feel like no one's taking your fear seriously, speak louder. You matter more than your fear. I recorded that moment, watched it 100 times, and each time I realized this story was never really about Wi-Fi. It was about control, about obsession, about what happens when power is given to people who mistake authority for morality. But it's also a story about survival, about standing your ground, about the quiet strength of a little girl who said, "No, this is mine. You can't take it." So, if you're watching this, if you've made it this far, here's what I want you to take with you. Don't ignore the signs. Don't downplay the gut feeling that something isn't right. Don't laugh off the neighbor who watches too closely, who escalates too quietly, who masks cruelty behind community. And most of all, don't underestimate the power of a child who knows how to defend herself, even if it starts with something as simple as a password. We've changed every lock in our house since that day, but the most important thing we locked down was the belief that our peace isn't negotiable. Not anymore. If this story moved you, if you believe voices like Emily's deserve to be heard, then don't forget to support the channel. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because the truth doesn't just need to be told, it needs to be remembered. This is the HOA stories where silence ends and justice begins.